He was the most powerful king who commanded thousands and conquered everything. But he's suddenly transported to another world, and he hears a voice telling him to seek the light in his next life. He wakes up to two strangers looking at him, and they talk about how he looks just like them. They call him Arthur, and he realizes he's been reincarnated into another world. He can't believe he was turned into a baby, and he soils himself, but he notes that his parents take good care of him. He finds his body like a prison, since he can't move the way he wants, and he wishes it was all a dream. But he soon realizes this world is different, as his father Reynold uses magic and smashes a boulder. But a fragment hits him, so his wife Alice heals him with her spell, and Arthur notes that their powers didn't exist in his old world. Reynold goes on a hunt with his friends, and a boar charges at him, but he takes it head on, and he easily defeats it. He returns home, and goes to hug his wife, but he realizes that his hands are dirty. Arthur thinks it's a dangerous world, since everyone's allowed to use weapons, so he's determined to get stronger as soon as possible. Alice asks Reynold if he's okay, so he tells her not to worry, because he just finished an easy job, and she tells Arthur it's time to nap. He's frustrated because he can't do what he wants, but he thinks his peaceful life isn't so bad. He recalls how he used to deal with assassins in his world, so he wasn't able to sleep when he wanted to. After a few days, Arthur's parents watch him as he learns how to crawl, and he sees himself in the mirror. They think he looks cute, but he still isn't used to being treated like a baby, and he comes up with a plan to get stronger. Alice kisses him and leaves him in his crib, but he manages to escape and slowly makes his way to the library while she's busy washing the dishes. He reads a book about the world he lives in and learns that he's on the Dicathan continent, which contains 3 kingdoms. The Darf Kingdom is an underground nation of dwarves, while the Elenor Kingdom is home to the forest elves. The humans live in the Sapin Kingdom, which has the highest population, and Arthur realizes that it's ruled by a king. But unlike in his old world, the throne is inherited and not seized. He takes a book about magic and realizes that the world's technology is primitive because the people are focused on developing their magic. We learn that mana is their source of power, and the ability to control it mostly comes down to genetics, but only 1% of the population can use it. He reads about the 2 applications of mana, which are known as augmenting and conjuring. Augmenters use their mana to enhance their physical abilities, while conjurers project it to cast spells. He learns about the mana cores, which allow people to control their mana, and they usually develop when a person reaches puberty. But he learns that he can create a mana core by channeling his mana into a single point in his body, and he realizes it's similar to Ki, which was his source of power during his past life. He tries to use his knowledge of Ki to create his mana core, but Alice suddenly grabs him, telling him he shouldn't make her worry, and she takes him back to his crib. After 2 years, we see Alice writing about her experience with Arthur, but she wonders why she has never seen him smile. She sees him training with Reynold, who teaches him how to wield a sword, but she gets upset, thinking Arthur is still too young. Alice heads to the town with Arthur, who looks at the items for sale, realizing most of them don't exist in the world he lived in. He watches a man use fire magic, and when they return home, he notes that he's enjoying his new life, because his parents are always looking after him. We learn that during his previous life, he was raised as an orphan, so he never knew what it was like to be loved by his parents. Alice tells him she enjoys every moment she spends with him, telling him he's just like his father. So she thinks he'll also become an adventurer when he grows up, but she wants him to live a peaceful life. He watches Reynold as he uses his mana to launch rocks into the air, and he thinks he was able to impress Arthur, but he notes that it'd be faster if he just picked them up. Alice tells him it's time for his nap, but he wants to read instead, and he uses his cuteness to convince her to let him do it. She leaves him in the library, and he works on creating his mana core. He focuses all of his mana into a single point in his body, but there's suddenly an explosion, and Reynold shields Alice with his body. He asks her if she's okay, but she mentions that Arthur is inside, so they rush to find him, but they realize he awakened his powers, and they can't believe it, because he's only 2 years old. He thinks he has made the first step to becoming stronger, but the roof suddenly collapses, and he's about to be crushed. He realizes he was careless, and thinks it's too early for him to die, but his parents save him. Reynold pushes the debris away, and they start crying, because they thought they lost him. But he doesn't understand why they're getting emotional, since he didn't know what it was like to have parents, and he also starts crying, but he struggles to understand his emotions. In a flashback, A man is accused of trying to kill Arthur, and the council tells him to return to his homeland, where he will be tried for his crimes. But he admits that he's guilty, and begs Arthur to spare his family, because they'll have a fate worse than death if they go back. The council refuses to listen to him, but Arthur kills his wife and daughter, and everyone's shocked by his actions. But they recognize it as an act of mercy, because the man's family won't have to suffer for the rest of their lives, and the man thanks him for granting his wish. We return to the present, as Reynold gives Arthur his gloves, but he refuses to take it, and decides to use a sword instead, because he knows that it isn't a good weapon for a child. They start training, and Reynold strengthens his sword with his mana, but Arthur does it as well, and destroys his sword in one hit. After that, Reynold tells Alice they need to hire a teacher for Arthur, because he knows how talented he is. She doesn't want him to leave their house, so she offers to teach him her magic instead, but Reynold reminds her that he can't learn her spells. He reveals that Arthur destroyed his sword during their training, and she can't believe it, since he's only 4. But she still refuses to let him leave their house, and they start arguing, but he mentions that they can go with him. They think it's a great idea, because they can hear everyone praise his talents, and they're excited to leave their house. They meet a group of adventurers, and one of them notes that Arthur has met them before, but thinks he doesn't remember them. But he knows that they're the Twin Horns party, and his parents used to work with them. The man introduces himself as Adam, and a girl hugs him, telling him to call her Angela. Another man puts him down, and introduces himself as Durden. But he notices a girl watching him, so they tell him her name is Jasmine, and their archer introduces herself as Helen. They begin their journey, and Alice tells Arthur to enjoy his first trip, but he notes that their transport is primitive, because he's used to traveling in battleships during his past life. He knows that their destination is Xyra's city, and he's looking forward to seeing it, but they have a stopover, and they suddenly get attacked by a pack of wolves. But the party fights them off, and Arthur is impressed by their moves. They eat the wolves for dinner, and Reynold tells Arthur to eat as much as he wants. He thinks he can't be picky, since they're traveling, but he realizes that Alice has no appetite. She tells him she's full, but he realizes she only had a bite. She sees that Reynold is injured, so she decides to heal him, and the others keep watch, because they don't want anyone to find out about her powers. We learn that she's a special kind of mage called an emitter, but she needs to keep it a secret, because people might take advantage of her if they learn about it. Adam asks Reynold if he can borrow Arthur, because he wants to play with him. But he takes out his weapon, so Arthur realizes that he wants to fight, and sees that nobody's trying to stop him. He uses his mana to strengthen his weapon, and Arthur thinks he won't hold back, so he prepares to fight, and also uses a skill to boost his speed. He charges in, and Adam prepares to attack him, but he suddenly disappears, and gets behind him. Everyone's impressed by his speed, but he suddenly loses his footing, because he still isn't used to fighting in his body. Adam blows him away, but Angela uses her wind magic to help him land safely. Everyone wonders why Adam didn't hold back, so he explains that it's because Arthur is a monster, wondering what kind of training he's been through. Jasmine wonders how he was able to improve his speed, and asks him to teach her the skill he used. He realizes she's the type of person who will stop at nothing to achieve her goal, so he ends up agreeing to teach her. They continue their journey, and everyone trains Arthur to become an adventurer. He shows his skill to Jasmine, and uses it to run with incredible speed, but she easily catches up to him. On his birthday, Jasmine gives him a knife, so he realizes that she has opened up to him, and everyone notes how she's acting different than her usual self. They prepare to move out, but Arthur realizes Alice is acting strange, so he asks her what's wrong, but she tells him she's okay. As they continue on, they suddenly get attacked by bandits, and their leader notes that he'll take the women and children so that he can sell them for money. He orders his men to attack, so they charge in, and Arthur's companions try to fight them off, but there are too many of them. Reynold crashes into Arthur's carriage, and Alice rushes to heal him, but he tells her she can't let the bandits learn about her power. He tells Arthur to help her escape, but he explains that he's strong enough to defeat the bandits, so he wants to join the fight. But Reynold reveals that Alice is pregnant, and Arthur realizes it's the reason why she's been acting strange. Reynold tells him he's about to become a big brother, so he needs to use his powers to protect her. He runs away with her, and the bandit leader orders his men to stop them, but Reynold charges at him. He tells Reynold he isn't strong enough to defeat him, but he goes all out and starts to push him back. There are bandits that are in Arthur's way, but his companions clear a path for him, telling him to escape with his mother. He recalls that he has killed countless people, so he doesn't value the lives of others. But a mage suddenly casts a wind spell, and he pushes his mother out of the way, and he gets hit instead. But he throws his knife at the mage, and it wraps around his leg, causing him to fall. Everyone realizes Arthur is in trouble, so Angela and Durden try to save him with their magic. He notes that he feels strange, because he's about to fall to his death, but his heart feels full. He thinks the man who begged him to spare his family felt the same way, and realizes that his parents cried when they saved him, because they were willing to risk their lives to protect him. But he knows that they'll also cry if he dies, and notes that he was looking forward to becoming a big brother. He later wakes up in the middle of the woods, realizing he was able to survive, but the ground suddenly starts shaking, and a dark creature appears, calling him by his name. He tries to attack it, but it flicks him away, telling him he still has a long way to go. She introduces herself as Sylvia, and tells him she's his ally, but he isn't sure what she means. She gives him some fruit, telling him he needs them to recover, but when he tries to move, he cries as he feels pain. She tells him he's lucky to be alive, and notes that she'll answer his questions after he eats the fruits. So he eats them, and he asks her what happened to his parents. She reveals that they're safe, telling him they already left a few days ago, and he starts crying tears of joy because he thought they didn't make it. After a few more days, we see that Arthur has already recovered, and he wants to go home. But Sylvia tells him he can't just walk away, since they're on the outskirts of the Elshire forest, and it's filled with wild animals and outlaws. She promises to open a dimensional rift to help him return home, but she notes that it'll take time to prepare. He starts training with a stick, and we learn that he finds her scary because of her appearance. He knows nothing about her, since she isn't telling him anything, but he thinks she's a good person. He activates his mana core, and she's impressed that he can do it at such a young age, but she uses her hand to gather mana, asking him if he knows what she's doing. So he notes that she's using magic and collecting mana at the same time, and she explains that humans can't usually do it because of the way they view mana. He tells her he wants to learn how to do it, but she asks him what he'll do with it, because she knows that he'll attain a new level of power after he learns it. He recalls how the bandits attacked his parents, and tells her he'll destroy everyone who takes away what's precious to him, but she flicks him away. She tells him he failed, so she won't teach him the ability, asking him if he thinks killing people is fun. She notes that her hand can easily tear him apart, but it can also touch him gently, and she asks him which one he prefers. So he tells her he prefers the gentle one, and she notes that she doesn't like violence because it makes people hate each other, telling him she wants him to live a peaceful life. He wonders why she would say that, thinking she must know everything about him, but he knows that it's impossible. She asks him what he'll do once he gets stronger, and he recalls the moments he spent with the twin horns, telling her he'll use his powers to protect everyone. She notes that his answer is perfect, but we see a creature searching for her, and it flies away, leaving a dead dragon behind. In a flashback, Arthur meets a man named Malone, who welcomes him to his office. We learn that Arthur is a king in name only, and the Parliament holds all the power in the country, which is facing a crisis. His role is to act as an agent of war, and Malone praises him for winning countless battles for the country. He wonders what Arthur is doing there, but he suddenly takes his leave. We return to the present, as Sylvia teaches Arthur how to use magic while collecting mana, and he recalls how he used Ki to defeat his opponents in his past life. He manages to use the skill, and realizes he can move while it's active, so she praises him, but she senses something approaching. So she makes him hide under the rubble, and tells him not to make a noise, as he sees the creature who was searching for her. She wonders how he found her, so he reveals that the scent of blood led him there, and tells her to come with him. But she refuses, so he blasts her with an energy ball, and she struggles to defend against it. He threatens to kill her if she continues to resist, but she unleashes her powers, causing her armor to shatter, as she reveals her true form. Arthur realizes she's a dragon, and she attacks the creature with her energy breath. He defends himself with a barrier, and tells her she won't survive if she uses that power, but she doesn't care, telling him she has lived a good life. The creature retaliates with countless energy blasts, destroying everything around them. She realizes that Arthur is safe, but the creature charges up another attack, and she realizes she's in trouble, so she uses her powers to stop time. Arthur comes out of the rubble, and she opens a portal for him to escape. She notes that it's connected to a remote place, but she thinks he'll be fine because he can survive with his new skill. He realizes she's injured, but she gives him an egg, telling him to take care of it and wrap her feather around it. She causes symbols to appear on his arms, and he asks her what they are, but she tells him he'll find out in the future. She mentions that it's time to say goodbye, revealing that she could have sent him home from the beginning, but she didn't want to let him go because she enjoyed living with him. She tells him she isn't strong enough to protect him, so he needs to escape, and he realizes that the moments he spent with her changed him. He notes that he considers her as family, but she reminds him that he already has a mother, so he decides to call her his grandma, and she cries as she hears it. She thanks him, but tells him it's time to go, so he takes the egg and feather before escaping through the portal. He tells her to come with him, but she closes the portal, and as time resumes, she's hit by the energy blast, and she falls to the ground. The creature approaches her, but he knows she's still alive, and she suddenly blasts him with her energy breath, causing a massive explosion. Arthur travels through the portal as he hears Sylvia's voice, telling him to remember everything she taught him. He tells her he's sad, and she notes that the world is filled with sadness, so they must change it with a smile. He thinks he can't do it, but she tells him to take it one step at a time, telling him she believes in him. She reveals that she knows about his past life, and she tells him not to fill his heart with anger and hatred, wanting him to live a life filled with the blessing of light. He wakes up in the middle of the woods, and he thinks about Sylvia's final words. He prepares to continue his journey with the egg she gave him, but he suddenly hears a noise. He enhances his speed to jump around the forest and sees an elf girl surrounded by bandits. She cries for help, but they tell her no one's coming for her, and they discuss how much they can make by selling her. Arthur recalls the moment his family was attacked by bandits, and he thinks about killing them, but he remembers that Sylvia wanted him to live a peaceful life, so he decides to control his emotions. The bandits take the girl, and they travel through the woods, as Arthur continues to follow them. Later on, the bandits have a break, so Arthur prepares to make his move. He wonders why the forest hounds pulling the carriage are so obedient, and realizes their collars have magic. He throws stones at one of them, and they become agitated, so one of the bandits tries to quiet them down. But Arthur suddenly appears behind him, killing him with a single hit, and he takes his knife. His companion sees his body, but Arthur sneaks up on him and takes him out as well. Another bandit appears, so Arthur attacks him, but their leader hears him screaming, so he wonders what happened. The bandit warns him that a mage is attacking them, but he realizes that Arthur is just a kid, thinking he can sell him if he captures him alive. He enhances his body and lunges at Arthur, but he manages to dodge him. He throws his knife at the man, but he just catches it and kicks him away. The man praises him for putting up a good fight, but he tells Arthur to give up, because he doesn't stand a chance. But he burns the man's leg, so he becomes angry, telling Arthur he's going to kill him, but Arthur throws his knife again, and it hits the man's head, killing him in an instant. The last bandit starts begging for his life, but Arthur finishes him off, and sets the girl free. He sees a silhouette covering her face, so he becomes confused, but he tells her she can go home now. She asks him about the bruises on his arm, and he thinks it isn't something a child should see, realizing it's the first time he's met someone his own age. He covers the bandits' bodies, telling her she's too young to see what happened, but she reminds him that he's also a kid. She wonders what happened to the bandits, so he notes that they had an accident, and he tells her she's safe now. He gathers her stuff, and tells her it was nice meeting her, but she grabs onto him, because she's too scared to be left alone, so he decides to keep her company. He wonders why she's afraid, because he thought elves were safe in the woods, but she tells him her parents warned her about the tree golems, which are said to eat children. She reveals that she doesn't know the way back, so he realizes that he can't just leave her, and he decides to help her return home. He thinks about killing the hounds, because he doesn't know how to control them, but she wants to set them free, telling him they were just being used by the bandits. She notes that the people of the forest cherish all life, and she removes the hounds' magic collars, allowing them to escape. They start looking for her home, and as they take a break, the girl reveals that her name is Tessia. Arthur gives her food, telling her they still have a long walk ahead of them, but she tells him it smells funny. She doesn't like it, telling him she wants to eat something sweet, and he thinks it's normal for her to act that way, because she's just a kid. She wonders what he's doing in the woods, and he reveals that he got separated from his family, so she thinks he also got lost. He asks her about the land of the elves, and she tells him her parents are always busy, so she spends most of her time with her caretakers. They continue searching for the Elenmore kingdom, and Arthur notices bugs flying around Tessia. She reveals that the elves use them to mark paths, and she puts one of them on his ear, as he realizes that it's how children play with each other. She mentions that she'll train at her master's place once her mana awakens, and he asks her if she has no organized education, but she doesn't know what he means. He sees a hound following them, so he keeps watching their backs, and as they're about to sleep, he's worried that it might attack them, so he tells her he'll keep watch while she rests in the tent. He starts thinking about the egg Sylvia gave him, but Tessia tells him to join her in the tent, telling him the beasts might attack him if he stays outside. He asks her if she's afraid of ghosts, but she explains that she's just thinking about their safety. He joins her inside, and she tells him to stay with her no matter what happens, so he promises not to leave her, telling her to go to sleep. She reveals that her grandparents told her all human men are perverts, but he tells her it's not true, but he realizes that she's already asleep. The next day, they continue their journey, as Arthur notes that Tessia is now comfortable around him. He helps her cross a river, but after some time, he feels an unbearable pain in his mana core. She leaves to look for healing herbs, but he tells her it's too dangerous, and as he waits for her to return, a hound suddenly appears. It gives him food that it hunted, and Tessia sees it, telling him it wants to repay him for setting it free. At night, they eat the food from the hound, and they both find it delicious. Arthur notes that growing children need meat, and Tessia reveals that she didn't find any herbs, but she found mushrooms instead. She tells him the female elves eat it all the time, so he decides to try it, but he ends up getting sick. As they rest in the tent, Tessia reveals that she has heard about the human and dwarf kingdoms, and she wants to visit them, but she's afraid that she might run into bad people. She notes that the elves don't trust other races, but Arthur suddenly falls asleep, so she gives him a blanket. The next day, we see that Arthur still isn't feeling well, and he thinks children's bodies are weak. Tessia asks him if she can call him Art, because she thinks they're friends now, but he tells her he isn't worthy to be her friend, since he's just a commoner. She tells him he sounds like an old man, and he starts mocking her for being a scaredy cat, so she becomes upset. But she tells him she saw something, and he thinks it's nothing special, but he realizes that a portal has appeared in a tree. She tells him they've finally found her home, and she invites him to come with her. But the guards immediately arrest him, telling him he isn't allowed to be there, and he sees that Tessia is just standing there, so he thinks she betrayed him. They prepare to kill him, but she begs them to let him go, telling them he saved her life. They think he brainwashed her, but her grandfather Varian arrives, telling them to let him go. He thanks him for saving the Princess of Elenmore, so Arthur realizes that she's a member of the royal family, and he can't believe it, because he thought she was just a commoner. Her parents also arrive, and they're glad she's safe, but they wonder what a human is doing there, telling the soldiers to arrest him. But she explains that he saved her life, telling her father they should invite him to their castle, and Varian mentions that he wants to speak to him later. Tessia shows Arthur around the kingdom, but he sees everyone staring at him, so he realizes they don't like humans. But Tessia also stares at him, and he finds her strange, wondering why she didn't do anything when he was about to get arrested, so he thinks he shouldn't let his guard down. They reach the castle, where the servants welcome Tessia back, and she tells them to take care of Arthur, telling them he isn't a bad human. She wonders what they should do next, but he notes that he wants to talk about what they've been going through, and her father wants to hear it. So he sits with her family, and her father introduces himself as King Alduin. Arthur tells them about his commoner background, and reveals that he was separated from his family after the bandits attacked them. So he ended up in the woods, where he saw Tessia being kidnapped by slave traders. Alduin becomes angry hearing this, and notes that it's the work of barbaric humans, but Arthur explains that not all slave traders are humans. Varian wonders how he was able to save her from the kidnappers, so he reveals that he used magic to defeat them, and the guards don't believe him, because he's just a kid. But Tessia mentions that he's telling the truth, and Alduin believes him, but Arthur notes that he needs the elves to send him back to his family as a reward for saving her. Alduin explains that they don't want to help humans, but Arthur can't believe they consider humans barbarians, because they aren't so different, and we see Tessia staring at her father. So he decides to help Arthur, telling him the teleportation gate to the Sapien Kingdom can only be used every 7 years, and they still need to wait 5 years for it to reopen. But he notes that they can't keep Arthur in the kingdom, so he'll order the guards to escort him back home, telling him they'll have a squad ready for him in the morning. Arthur thanks Alduin for granting his request, and he's glad that he can finally return home, but he suddenly feels pain in his mana core again. After that, we see Arthur taking a bath, but he notes that the pain is getting worse, so he thinks he needs help. At night, Arthur sees Tessia with her parents, and he thinks about his family, wondering if they'll be happy to see him again. Tessia joins him, and she apologizes for her parents, but he knows that they were just worried about her, telling her she can continue acting like a spoiled princess. She mentions that he'll experience the same thing once he's reunited with his parents, but he isn't sure if they'll be happy to see him again, thinking he's the reason why the bandits attack them. But she grabs onto his face, telling him she's sure his parents miss him, because she already misses him since he's about to leave. They're suddenly surrounded by fireflies, and Tessia mentions how she likes watching them. But Arthur realizes they're under attack, so he protects her, and he charges at the attacker, who turns out to be Varian. Arthur wonders why he attacked them, but he realizes that Varian just threw fireflies, and he reveals that he was just testing him. Varian finds him interesting, so he gives him a wooden sword, and forces Tessia to watch them fight. Arthur charges in, but Varian easily dodges his attacks, and he realizes he's too slow, so he tries to move as fast as he can. Varian breaks his sword, and the tip flies at Tessia, but Arthur manages to stop it. He uses his magic to attack Varian, but it doesn't work, and as he sees Varian's eyes, he remembers the beasts he fought during his past life, thinking he won't survive if he doesn't fight seriously. He gets blown away, but he immediately recovers, and he manages to land a hit. Varian can't believe Arthur was able to touch him, and he wants to continue the fight, but Tessia tells him to stop. He asks Arthur if he wants to become his disciple, but he explains that he needs to leave because he wants his parents to know that he's okay, so Varian notes that he can still contact his parents while he's there. But his mana core suddenly starts hurting again, and Varian realizes that he inherited a beast's will, telling him he'll die if he doesn't become his disciple. We see Arthur as a dark creature comes out of his body, and as it approaches him, he wonders if it's a manifestation of his inner self. But Tessia suddenly wakes him up, telling him to get changed, because Varian is waiting for him outside. Alduin tells Varian that they can't let Arthur stay in Elenwar, because he doesn't belong there, asking his father why he wants Arthur to become his disciple. But he explains that he's just fond of him, and tells him to get in the carriage. As they travel, Varian notes that Tessia is always talking about Arthur, and he reveals she was always lonely, since she was the sole successor to the throne. She tried to make friends, but they all betrayed her, so she learned to stay away from people. But he notes that she always smiles when she's with Arthur, telling him she isn't always that happy, so he thanks him for helping her open up. They arrive at a strange house, where Varian yells at his friend to come out, and she tells him to stop shouting. He reveals that she's a special mage named Rinia, telling Arthur she'll help him contact his parents, but he wonders how it's possible. So she reveals that she's a seer, and her magic allows her to see fragments of the past and future, but she can also help him talk to his parents. She tells him to look at the water, and focus on thinking about his parents, as she uses her magic to help him reach them. We see his parents as they prepare to eat, but they think about Arthur, because it's actually his birthday. We learn that they fell into despair after they lost him, and Reynold blamed himself for what happened, because he told Arthur to protect his mother. After the incident, they moved to a city, where Reynold got a job, and they found a new place to call home, but they still haven't moved on from what happened. They suddenly hear Arthur's voice, and he tells them he's still alive, but he's in the kingdom of Elenwar, where he's using magic to talk to them. He explains that he can't return yet, because he needs to fix a problem in his body, but he tells them he'll be back as soon as he recovers. He notes that he doesn't know when he'll be able to talk to them again, but he tells them not to worry about him. They're overjoyed to learn that he's still alive, and he starts crying, as he notes that he doesn't want to make them sad again, so he agrees to become Varian's disciple. They return to the castle, where Tessia convinces her father to let Arthur stay, and Varian notes that he'll take responsibility for anything that happens, since Arthur is his disciple. After that, Alduin apologizes for being rude to Arthur, and tells him he's welcome to stay in the castle. He realizes that Tessia and Varian are Alduin's weakness, and he tells him he feels honored, but Tessia mentions that she wants to play with Arthur. Tessia takes Arthur to the town, where he bumps into a boy named Ferrith, who tells him he doesn't belong there, and the kids start insulting him because he's human. She tells him to ignore them, and Ferrith notes that being with a human will ruin her reputation, so he offers to escort her, but she refuses to go with him. Arthur starts mocking him for having a ridiculous name, and he becomes angry hearing this, so he challenges Arthur to a duel. He realizes everyone is watching them, and Ferrith tells Tessia to judge their fight. As the match begins, Ferrith immediately charges in, but Arthur easily knocks him out. He can't believe the fight is already over, but Tessia tells him to run, and they enjoy the rest of the day together, as Arthur realizes that he's growing attached to her. She asks him if he's ready for his training tomorrow, and he recalls that Varian warned him that his training as a beast tamer will be brutal, but it will lead to significant results if he can endure it. He tells her he's excited for his training, telling her he'll work hard for his future, and she notes that she'll also work hard, because she doesn't want to lose to him. The next day, Varian tells Arthur it's time to begin his training, and he knows it will be difficult, but he's determined to get through it. 3 years later, we see Tessia telling Arthur to wake up, and she uses her mana as she grabs him, causing him to scream, and he tells her to be more gentle. They start training together, and Varian watches them as they fight, realizing they're ready for the next step. He reveals that once a mage stabilizes his mana, he can obtain one of the 4 magical elements. Varian explains that a mage's race will determine the elements he can use, revealing that the elves have the wind element, while dwarves are better at using the earth and fire attributes. But humans are able to use all 4 elements, and Arthur is surprised hearing this, but Varian reminds him that he can only pick one of them. Tessia wonders why Arthur didn't use magic while he was training his body, so Varian tells her it's because he's weak. He notes that Arthur's mana core contains a beast's will, which ruins the balance between his body and his mana core, and it's the reason why he's been feeling pain. We learn that when an elf awakens their magic at the age of 10, they're considered to be gifted, but Tessia was able to use magic when she turned 9, and she started training with Arthur ever since. Varian tells him it's time to awaken the beast will inside his body, telling him he'll no longer feel the pain in his mana core if they succeed, and he'll become a real beast tamer. Varian tries to spark a flame in his mana core, but a bright energy suddenly comes out of his body, and it blows Varian and Tessia away. They wonder what just happened, and Arthur loses consciousness, so they take him back to the castle. He later wakes up, and Varian asks him if he's familiar with his beast will, so he explains that he got it from a dragon. Varian can't believe it, and he tells Arthur not to tell anyone about it, because a dragon's will could attract unwanted attention. He thanks Varian for worrying about him, but he tells Arthur he'll be returning home in 4 months, because a cultural exchange program between the 3 kingdoms has begun. So the entrance to the human city of Xyrus will open, and Arthur will finally be able to go home. But he's sad hearing this, and we see that Tessia isn't happy to learn about it either. That evening, as Arthur prepares to sleep, Sylvia's egg suddenly hatches, and a baby dragon emerges. He finds it cute, but it suddenly bites him, causing a marking to appear on his arm, and he starts hearing the dragon's voice. He realizes that it can talk inside his head, and he decides to name it Sylvie, telling her to consider him as her father. The next day, Tessia goes to wake Arthur up, but she screams as she sees Sylvie, so he wakes up, but he realizes that she's hugging it since it's so cute. They go to train with Varian, who freaks out as he sees Sylvie, and he realizes that it hatched from the assimilation of the beast's will. Arthur wonders what he should do with her, and Varian notes that nobody believes in dragons, so he can just tell everyone it's a mana beast. Varian tells him he has awakened as a beast tamer, so he now must train his beast in mana core, telling him the best way to do it is through a real fight. Varian surrounds himself with a strange energy, and he transforms into a dark monster, telling Arthur it's time to begin their training. But he can't keep up with Varian's movements, so he gives up, telling him he looks scary. Varian returns to his original form, and Arthur tells him he couldn't sense his presence while he was a monster, so he explains he used his magic to manipulate wind and sound. A few days later, we see that Arthur has mastered his beast will, so he can now use the beast's power, and his body has become so strong that the pain in his mana core has stopped bothering him. We see Arthur in the town with Tessia, and Ferrith bumps into him again, but Arthur doesn't remember him. so he becomes upset, reminding Arthur about their previous encounter, and he challenges him to a duel again, but he instantly loses, and his friends think he's pathetic. Tessia reminds Arthur about him, and he finally remembers who Ferrith is, telling him he's glad to see him again. They shake hands, and Ferrith's friends note that he always wanted to befriend Arthur, who wonders if they'll participate in the culture exchange program, so they reveal that all nobles are required to join. But Ferrith thinks Tessia won't participate because she might get lost, so she becomes upset and punches him away. After that, Arthur tells Tessia she shouldn't punch her subjects, telling her to act more like a princess. But she notes that he'll be leaving soon, wondering why he's getting angry like her father, and she suddenly runs off. That evening, we see Tessia crying in her room, but Arthur invites her to go to the forest. She decides to go with him, and she notes that they aren't allowed to be there, but he assures her that they'll be fine. They see the hounds they saved, realizing they're doing well, and as Tessia and Arthur rest near a campfire, she tells him she doesn't want him to go, but she suddenly falls asleep. The next day, Arthur prepares to leave, and everyone sees him off, as Varian gives him a compass, telling him he can use it to return to Elenmore. But Varian tells him not to go out at night too often, so Arthur apologizes for going to the forest. As Arthur is about to leave, Tessia suddenly rushes to him and tells him to take care of himself. So he hugs her, telling her he'll miss her, and she mentions she feels the same way. After that, Arthur arrives in Zyra's city, where he heads to find his parents. His sister Eleanor opens the door, and his parents are surprised to see him, as he mentions that he's finally back. But Eleanor wonders who he is, so Alice mentions he's her big brother. He tells them everything that happened after they got separated, but he decides not to mention Sylvia, because he thinks they might get into trouble if they learn about her. He explains that he found Sylvia in a mana beast's cave, where he saw that its mother was dying, so he decided to adopt it. He asks his father about his job, so he reveals that he now works as a security instructor at the Helstia auction house, and he notes that his mana core reached the dark orange stage 2 years ago. We learn about the colors of mana, which range from black to white, and the brighter colors are considered superior to the darker ones. Arthur knows that Reynold trained to level up his mana core, and he asks Arthur what stage he's in, so he reveals that he's light red. Reynold can't believe it, realizing Arthur is about to overtake him, and he thinks they should spar in the garden. His boss Vincent Helstia suddenly bursts through the door, asking him about Arthur, so he introduces himself to Vincent's family. Vincent's daughter Lilia finds Sylvie cute, so she asks for Arthur's permission to touch it, and Reynold mentions that they're about to have a sparring match. They head outside, and Vincent can't believe Arthur's mana core is bright red, because he's only 8, revealing that even the geniuses of the Xyrus Academy barely reach dark red by the age of 11. But Arthur notes that he hasn't been training his mana core properly, because he focused on assimilating Sylvia's will. He starts fighting his father, who blocks his attacks, telling him his skills have improved, but he mentions that he'll start fighting seriously. He surrounds his body with flames, as Arthur notes that augmenters can't manipulate the elements around them, so they usually struggle to identify the element that's compatible with them. But after reaching a certain level, they can decide which element they want to use, and those with exceptional talent can control more than one element. Arthur struggles to keep up with his father, so he decides to go all out, and a bright energy covers his fists. He rushes forward, but Reynolds still manages to overpower him, and he gets pushed back. But he recalls that Varian taught him how to go beyond his limit, and lightning suddenly starts coming out of his body, and it sets the ground on fire. Reynold knows that he's using high-level fire magic, and Arthur controls the water from the fountain to put out the fire, which shocks everyone, realizing he can use 2 elements at the same time. Reynold tells him he's amazing, but he reveals that he just learned it recently, revealing that he can barely control it. After that, Vincent notes that Arthur has a bright future ahead of him, so he suggests sending him to the Xyrus Academy, which is the most prestigious school in the continent. His wife Tabitha tells Reynold not to worry about the tuition fees, because they'll pay for it, and Vincent notes that he knows the director of the school, so Arthur can enroll even if he's underaged. But he explains that he just reunited with his family, so he wants time to spend with them. We see Arthur walking around the house, and he comes across Lilia, who takes him to her special dining area. The servants give her food, and they tell Arthur that she goes there whenever she's stressed, revealing that her parents want her to become a mage, even though they can't use magic. The next day, Arthur meets the Twin Horns party, and they're all happy to see him, telling him he's grown. They reveal that they found a high-paying job in a remote city, so they're all doing well, and Angela notes that they've been to different places because of their job. Arthur realizes that he has only seen the Dicathan continent, and he considers becoming an adventurer so that he can explore the rest of the kingdom. We see Arthur giving Sylvia a bath, as he thinks about how Lilia's parents want her to awaken her powers, and he notes that he can't get it out of his head. After that, Alice tells Arthur they need to get him cleaned up, and she takes him to a hairstylist, who tells him he'll shine after his haircut. Everyone's impressed with his new look, but he wonders why they took him to the hairstylist. So Tabitha explains that they want him to look his best, because they're planning to take him to the Helstia auction house. But she notes that they'll just show him around the city for today, and Eleanor tells him to escort her, while Lilia mentions that she's jealous because Eleanor used to be attached to her before he arrived. He explains that it's because he just got back, and they explore the city together, but they come across a group of students from the Xyrus Magic Academy. Lilia explains that their uniforms give them authority, but Arthur thinks they're dangerous because they look like troublemakers. He sees a shop selling beast cores, which grant power to their users, and Tabitha notes that the cores with a beast's will are worth over 100 gold coins. He doesn't know how much that's worth, so she explains that it's enough money to live for 250 years, but Lilia notes that there are cheaper cores available in the weapons stores. She wants to buy one of them, but Tabitha tells her it isn't a shortcut to awakening her sorcery, and notes that she's too young to have a beast core. They start eating together, but Arthur realizes that Lilia isn't happy, and she suddenly walks away. So he follows her to a shop that sells beast cores, and she realizes that she can buy one of them with her allowance, but he stops her, telling her it isn't the key to awakening her magic. She thinks it's worth a try, and explains that she tried everything to awaken her magic, telling him he wouldn't understand how she feels, since he's a prodigy. He realizes that he's the reason why she feels pressured, so he wants to talk to her, but she tells him to leave her alone, and accidentally bumps into a student from the academy. She immediately apologizes, but he starts bullying her, and the shopkeeper hears the commotion, but he realizes that the students are from the Xyrus Academy, so he decides to leave them alone. Their leader threatens her with his magic, so Arthur prepares to take them on, but Tabitha suddenly arrives, telling them Lilia is the daughter of the Helstias. They know that her family donates to the academy, and the director will scold them if they mess with her, so they decide to walk away. But one of them thinks she's trying to buy her spot in the academy because she has no talent whatsoever. After that, Vincent learns about what happened, and Lilia apologizes for getting into trouble, but he tells her not to worry because it won't be a problem after Arthur joins the academy. She thinks her father wants to send him in her place because she still can't use magic, and Tabitha tells her to calm down, but she tells them that she hates them. She heads to her room, where she wonders when her magic will awaken, and she thinks her parents are donating to the academy because they want to secure a spot for her. Arthur suddenly visits her, telling her he never wanted to take her spot, but she reveals that she's jealous because he stole her father's attention. She thinks it's her fault for not awakening her magic, thinking her parents must be tired of her, and he understands how she feels. He grabs her face and tells her everyone knows how hard she's trying, but her father is fond of him because he's just like Eleanor, who's attached to him since she just met him. Lilia thinks she's just pressuring herself, but he thinks it isn't true, and asks her if she really wants to use magic. After that, Arthur tells Vincent that Lilia ran away from home and went on a quest to awaken her magic, but he tells him not to worry because he knows where she's going. He gives Vincent a letter, and he realizes that she left because she thinks she's a burden to them, but she promises to become a sorcerer in the future. He thinks he screwed up because he pressured her to become a sorcerer so that she would have a good future, but he notes that he still loves her even if she can't use magic. She suddenly appears, and she apologizes for lying to him, but Arthur reveals that he was the one who planned everything because he wanted to test her parents. Vincent realizes that he was insensitive, and he tells Lilia she doesn't need to attend the academy, promising to make her happy even if she doesn't become a sorcerer. But she notes that she wants to go to the academy so that she can become a sorcerer who makes everyone happy. Arthur decides to awaken her mana, and he makes her sit with Eleanor, but Tabitha isn't sure if his plan will work. He tells them to take deep breaths and close their eyes, and Eleanor mentions that she saw lights for a moment, but he tells her they disappeared because she let her breathing get disrupted. Lilia notes that she can't see anything, but he tells her to relax, and he puts his hands on their backs. She starts to see lights, and her parents are glad that she has awakened her magic, realizing Arthur's plan worked. After that, everyone celebrates Lilia's awakening, and her maid tells her to eat as much as she wants. Arthur notes that it might take 2 to 3 years for her power to stabilize, telling her it will take a lot of work, so he wants her to train every day. Arthur heads to the Helstia auction house, where we see that Reynold is the head of security, and he orders the guards to stay alert. The host begins the auction and reveals that the royal family is in the building, so everyone cheers for them as Arthur realizes that they love the king Glader. The first item is an elemental weapon, which can immobilize its target, and it sells for over 50 gold, but Arthur realizes that Sylvie is missing, so he leaves to look for her. Vincent announces that the next item is a world lion cub, and he notes that it will become an A-class mana beast when it grows up. The bidding begins at 100 gold, and the nobles raise it to 450, but Prince Curtis tells his father that he wants it. So Glader puts a bid of 1,000 gold, which surprises everyone, and Vincent congratulates him on his purchase. We see Sylvie walking around the building when she comes across a mage named Sebastian, who tells her to go with him, but Arthur suddenly arrives and recognizes him as a royal conjurer. He asks Sebastian to return her because she's his partner, but he seems to be interested in her because he knows that she's a unique mana beast. Sylvie returns to Arthur and he prepares to leave, but Sebastian tells him to leave her behind because he wants to keep her as his mana beast. He notes that he can unlock her full potential and he threatens Arthur with his flames, but he doesn't care and prepares to walk away. But Sebastian mentions that he's a conjurer of the royal family, so he can punish Arthur's family if he doesn't cooperate. He becomes angry hearing this, and everyone in the building senses his overwhelming bloodlust, so they start to panic, and Glader orders his guards to stay alert. Sebastian freaks out, but Arthur realizes that he's screwed up because he let his emotions get the better of him. Glader knows that Reynold is the head of security, and he admits that he wasn't able to catch the intruder, so Glader wants to punish him. Sebastian tells him to have mercy because no one was hurt during the incident, but he mentions that he's interested in Sylvie. Glader notes that he has served the royal family for a long time, and he wants to reward him for his loyalty, telling Reynold he'll be forgiven if he lets Sebastian have Sylvie. But he explains that he's in no position to give her away because Arthur found her himself, so Glader asks him to give her to Sebastian. But he refuses to do it and notes that he can never replace her, so Glader offers to give him the World Lion Cub in exchange, thinking it's a fair trade. But Arthur notes that Sylvie isn't for sale, and Glader once again asks him to part with her. But he asks him if he could sell his own children, telling him he can't accept the answer because of his pride, and Sebastian is upset hearing this, so he orders the guards to attack. But Arthur easily takes them down, and Sebastian can't believe they're no match for him, but he wants to get Sylvie at all costs. He summons his flames to attack, but time suddenly freezes, and Sebastian wonders what's happening. He realizes that Arthur stopped time, and he tells Sebastian his spells won't work, so he starts to panic, telling him he can't defeat a royal conjurer. But he breaks Sebastian's leg, so he screams in pain, and Arthur explains that nobody can hear him. He starts begging for mercy, but time suddenly resumes as Arthur reaches his limit. He later wakes up and realizes he went overboard, since he still hasn't mastered his ability to stop time. Alice joins him, and he asks her what happened after he passed out, so she reveals that she used her powers to heal him. She takes him to the market, where she buys a clip for Eleanor, telling him to give it to her. She asks him if he wants to buy anything, but he's worried about their financial status because he thinks Reynold lost his job. But she notes that she also has a job, and they go shopping together as he helps her carry her things. Arthur returns home, but he sees Reynold arguing with a man who apologizes for what happened. He gives them a bag of coins and reveals that it's from Glader, telling them to accept it as a show of good faith for the incident. Arthur knows that he could have died, but he decides to accept it anyway, and the man notes that the guards who attacked him were fired. Reynold thinks they deserve a worse punishment, but the man reminds him that he failed as the head of security, and Arthur notes that it's his fault for defying the king. He wonders what happened to Sebastian, so the man reveals that he was relieved from his position, and he's currently undergoing treatment for his broken leg. He claims that Arthur was the one who injured him, but Reynold thinks it's ridiculous, and the man notes that Glader isn't happy with the incident, so he's offering gold to make amends. The man tells Reynold to teach his son manners, because not everyone is as forgiving as their king, and he accepts the apology. But he gives the gold to Arthur, and reminds him that he's the one who almost got killed. The next day, Arthur heads to the academy, but he sees a strange bird fly away, and he follows it to the woods, where he meets an old woman, who reveals that she's been waiting for him. He recognizes her as the director of the academy, and she explains that she wants to know how powerful he is, because Vincent told her about him. He can sense that she has incredible power, and he decides to show off his skills, to prove that Vincent isn't lying. He combines his wind and earth magic to launch rocks at her, but she easily destroys them, so he follows up with a fire spell, which summons burning weapons to attack her. But she casts wind magic to defend herself, so he decides to go all out, and uses mana to strengthen his body. He charges in, but she blows him away with her wind, telling him she's impressed by his abilities, but she can tell that he's overestimating himself. She tells him not to lose consciousness, and uses her magic to create a piercing sound, which causes him to struggle, as he wonders if she's also a unique sorcerer. She stops using her spell, and tells him he passed, but she wonders why he went there just to show her his powers. So he reveals that he needs her influence and authority to protect his family, promising to enroll at the academy if she grants his wish. But he explains that he's still underage, so she needs to wait 3 years before he becomes her student. She wonders why he doesn't want to begin his training yet, so he explains that he wants to enjoy his life, telling her about his dream to become an adventurer and explore the world. But he reveals that his parents don't know about his plan yet, so she tells him to convince them before she accepts the deal. After that, Vincent tells Arthur's parents about his powers, and Alice doesn't want him to become an adventurer, because she thinks he's too young to go off on a journey. He explains that he'll return every few months, telling her he wants to see the Decathan continent, because he still has much to learn about it. He tells them that he wants to feel what they felt while they were adventurers, but we learn that he just wants to test how strong he's become, and he thinks staying there to train is boring. Reynold knows that Alice is worried about Arthur, because it's dangerous to go on adventures, so he suggests sending him out with someone they can trust. Reynold asks his friends if anyone wants to travel with Arthur, and Adam notes that he isn't interested, because he's afraid that Arthur might kill him. Reynold mentions that he doesn't have much to offer, but he promises to repay the person who looks after his son, and Jasmine volunteers to do it. Everyone's surprised hearing this, because they know that she likes to work alone, but she mentions that she wants to help Arthur. Adam thinks she's the perfect choice, because she's an augmenter who can use elements, and he notes that she just hit the light orange rank, so she's strong enough to protect Arthur. That evening, Arthur sees Lilia meditating, and he realizes that she no longer needs him to project mana into her. He knows that Eleanor has talent, so he thinks she'll awaken her powers when she's around 7, but he wants her awakening to be delayed, so that she won't attract any unwanted attention. He tells Reynold he wants to pick a weapon at the auction house, so they head to the storage room, where he starts looking for a sword. He browses the selection, but he can't pick a sword, because most of them are too large for him. Sylvie leads him to a staff, and he notes that he isn't interested in it, but he realizes that it's ridiculously heavy. He thinks it might be an elemental weapon, so he lets his mana flow into it, and it suddenly starts glowing. He realizes that it's actually a sword, and he takes a swing, but he realizes that it's too heavy for him. He wants to test how sharp it is, so he attacks a barrel, which instantly gets cut in half. He sees strange writings on the sword, and he wonders what they mean, but he drops it as it suddenly starts sparking. He picks it up again, and notices that it's much lighter than before, realizing it's now perfectly suited to his body. Reynold arrives to pick him up, and he takes a random sword, telling his father it's what he picked out. But Vincent asks him about the staff around his waist, so he explains that he just found it on the floor, and wants to use it for practice. Vincent asks his servant about it, so he reveals that an old man dumped it on them, because he couldn't find anyone worthy to wield it. The servant notes that appraisers checked it out, but they all think it's nothing special. So he decided to just keep it there, and he thinks about getting a higher ranked appraiser to check its value. But Arthur tells Vincent he wants to keep it, calling him his uncle, and Vincent is happy hearing this, so he lets him have it. Everyone celebrates Arthur's 9th birthday, and he opens his mother's present, realizing it's a gauntlet with healing gems. Vincent gives Arthur a ring, and he shows another one to Alice, telling her she'll be able to see if Arthur's mana ever reaches a dangerously low level. Adam gives him a scroll that produces sounds, explaining that he can use his mana to leave a message on it, and Alice can reply when she receives it. He thanks everyone for their presence, telling them he'll be starting his adventure, and Alice reminds him to prioritize his own safety. That evening, Arthur prepares to leave, as he thinks about how his family and friends love him, and he wants to get stronger so that he can protect them. His family sees him off, and they tell him not to worry about them, because they'll be fine while he's away. Alice reminds him to keep his ring on, telling him to have a good trip, and he promises to return home safely. He begins his journey with Jasmine, and they head to the Adventurers Guild, where she tells the receptionist that he's there for a rank assessment. We learn that Arthur is wearing a mask, because he doesn't want the royal family to recognize him, and he now goes by the alias Note. They meet the guild chief named Caspian, who reveals that there's usually a written exam before the rank assessment, but he decides to skip it for Arthur, since Jasmine recommended him. They head to the exam hall, where they see a girl named Diane fighting the examiner, who counters her water spell and suddenly appears behind her. She tells Diane that her magic is impressive, but her defenses are lacking, so she'll start as a C-class adventurer. Jasmine notes that she shows promise because she was able to reach C-class at such a young age, and an official introduces the next candidate, Elijah. But the official talks to the examiners, and he mentions that Elijah will be a B-class adventurer, so everyone's confused, wondering why he was exempted from the exam. The next candidate is a boy named Lucas, who notes that he wants to skip the exam and join the A-class, and the examiner knows that he's at the light orange stage. Jasmine is impressed hearing this, but Arthur sees his ears, and realizes that he's an elf. He summons his guardian and orders it to attack, but the examiner uses earth magic to defeat it, so he uses his spell to create a massive fireball, which starts raining flames from the sky. But he loses control over his magic, so the fireball explodes, and it's about to destroy everything in the area, but the examiner uses her wind magic to extinguish the flames. She gives him her feedback, but he suddenly attacks her, so Arthur throws his sword to stop him. The official scolds Lucas for attacking her, and she tells him his ego is his greatest weakness, so he deserves to be in the B-class. She uses her magic to take him away, and the official reveals that Arthur is up next, so he prepares to fight the examiner, but the official freaks out as he senses Arthur's aura. Caspian volunteers to fight him, but the official reminds him that he's a double A-class adventurer, so he shouldn't be administering the exam. He explains that he just knows Arthur's sponsor, so he wants to test him, and Arthur knows that he's incredibly skilled, so he looks forward to fighting him. He covers his sword with flames, and clashes with Caspian, who attacks him with incredible speed. He lunges at Caspian, and prepares to strike him, but he gets blown away, and Caspian tells him not to get overconfident. After that, the receptionist tells Arthur that he's now a B-class adventurer, and the examiners discuss how they named multiple B-class adventurers in a single day. But Caspian reminds them how the Xyrus city just welcomed elves and dwarves as adventurers, and reveals that Lucas is a half-elf, while Elijah is human, but he was raised in the Dwarven Kingdom. We learn that he was sent there as the first representative of the dwarves, and he was allowed to skip the exam because he had a guarantor, who even Caspian couldn't overrule. He mentions that they know nothing about Arthur, but his guarantor belongs to the Flamesworth family, which is known for producing the best fire mages in the kingdom. Caspian notes that he was impressed by Arthur's sword skills, and thinks he'll become a formidable swordsman in the future, but he still has a long way to go. We return to Arthur, as he realizes that he hasn't been training like he did during his past life, because he has become accustomed to the powers he was born with. He bumps into Elijah, who recalls that he was the one who saved the examiner, and Lucas wonders why they aren't talking to him, because he's also a B-class adventurer. Arthur explains that they don't like him, because he broke the rules, so he grabs onto Arthur, telling him they aren't on the same level. But he realizes that everyone's watching them, so he decides to walk away. After that, Jasmine takes Arthur to a beast's pasture, and reveals that it has already been explored, so it's the perfect place for newbies to train and collect materials. But they suddenly see massive explosions in the forest, and a giant boar appears, eating the adventurers in the area. Jasmine wonders what it's doing there, because it isn't native to the area, and they realize that it escaped from a caravan. It charges towards them, so they jump away, and Jasmine attacks it with her knives. But it immediately recovers, and she dodges its attack, but she's about to fall to the ground. So Arthur saves her, and she realizes that the boar is preparing to attack a group of newbies, so she jumps in to protect them. It rushes forward, but Arthur waits for the right moment and attacks it from the side, and he defeats it with his flames. At night, Jasmine reveals that she became an adventurer to get away from her family because they taught her that fire is the strongest element. But she has no talent for fire magic, so they labeled her as a failure, and Arthur tells her it isn't true because all of the elements are equal. She laughs at him since he's so worked up, and he realizes that he got angry because he was also called a failure in his past life. She reveals that the twin horns changed her life because they scolded her for always acting alone and taught her to trust in people. She wonders if he's also met people who have changed his life, and he isn't sure if he can change, but he remembers everyone that he's met, thinking he needs to change so that he can protect them. We see Tessia watching him, wondering why he's traveling with a woman, and Virion thinks she's jealous that he's taking on a new challenge, so he tells her to work on improving her magic. After 2 years, we see that everyone's talking about Arthur, and they all recognize him as an overpowered adventurer. He's now known as the Masked Swordsman, but Jasmine tells him it's time to go, and he knows that he still needs to continue to get stronger. Arthur talks to Jasmine about their next quest, and we learn that they've been sent to investigate a village near the Beast Glade, but they decide to prioritize their survival and avoid dangerous monsters. Sylvie leaves to train in the woods, and they see tracks that head into the village, but they wonder why none of them point in the opposite direction. They decide to dig deeper, and they reach the village, but wonder why there's nobody there. They see crystals everywhere, and realize the villagers are trapped inside them, but they see a girl, so they ask her what happened. She explains that she went to the forest to gather herbs, but everyone was already trapped in crystals when she returned, and Arthur thinks a monster is behind it. Jasmine notices a string attached to the girl, so she prepares to cut it off, but the girl suddenly gets dragged into the woods. A giant spider catches her, so Arthur prepares to save her, but Jasmine tells him there's nothing they can do, and the spider traps the girl in a crystal. It launches its web at them, and they run for their lives, so it crawls back into the woods. We cut to a couple of cultists, who discuss that there's an alliance between 3 of the races, and one of them points to the Beast Glade. She notes that the people who bear the future of the continent are gathered there, and the other one thinks they must get rid of them, but he seems to find Arthur interesting. Jasmine tells Arthur the spider is called an arachne, and explains that she doesn't want to fight it, since it took an entire lineup of the twin horns to defeat it. She notes that they couldn't have one without Alice, since her emitter powers allowed them to escape from its crystals, and she explains that the only other way to break its curse is to kill it. But it has high resistance to magic, and its shell is so tough that swords can't cut through it. She tells Arthur they're safe since it avoids daylight, and he thinks they should return to the guild to report the situation, but the arachne suddenly appears behind them. It activates its curse, so she pushes him out of the way and tells him to escape, but she ends up getting trapped in a crystal. He doesn't want to leave her behind, so he decides to fight the arachne, which fires its webs at him, but he manages to cut them down. He uses his move from his previous life to close the distance, but it prepares to crush him, so he deflects it and jumps on its back. He stabs it in the head, and realizes he can't pierce through its shell, so he slashes it with all his might, but it still has no effect. He realizes his sword isn't sharp enough to defeat it, so he enchants them with his fire, and continues to attack the arachne. It screams as it gets covered in flames, but it still fights on, and Arthur recalls that Jasmine told him it has high magic resistance. He launches earth spikes to smash its head, which leaves a crack on its shell, and it rushes toward him. He jumps on top of it and drives his sword through the crack, as he summons his lightning to shock it from the inside, which causes it to struggle as it screams in pain. He drives the sword even deeper as he summons his lightning again, and the arachne falls to the ground, but he wonders why Jasmine is still trapped. He realizes it's still alive, and it activates its curse to attack him, but he suddenly stops time, and notes that he is grateful since it helped him remember how he used to wield his sword. He cuts it into pieces, and it finally meets its end, but he realizes he's exhausted, so he thinks he needs to train harder to strengthen his body. Sylvie returns to him and asks him if something happened, so he notes that he already took care of everything, but she wishes him the best of luck, since Jasmine is about to scold him. He's glad the curse is broken, but she threatens to beat him up, so he apologizes for not listening to her, and explains that he fought the arachne since he got carried away. She's impressed that he defeated it alone, but he explains that he still isn't satisfied with his powers since he thinks he isn't strong enough to protect the people he cares about. She notes that his loved ones would be devastated if anything happens to him, so she asks him not to take risks for her, but he tells her that he also cares about her, which causes her to blush. She thanks him for saving her, and he tells her they should get the arachne's core, but they realize that Sylvie is already eating it. They return to the guild, where everyone learns that Arthur defeated an arachne, but Lucas doesn't believe him and asks him to show its mana core. He explains that he couldn't collect it, so Lucas thinks he's lying, but he brings out its eye, and everyone knows it's real. Lucas takes back what he said, but notes that he can also bring down an arachne and walks away, so Elijah realizes he hasn't changed at all. After that, Arthur returns home, and his parents ask him about his adventure, so he tells them he defeated an arachne. They wonder how he did it, so he explains that he focused his attacks on a single spot and cast his magic through an opening he made. Alice is angry since he promised not to do anything dangerous, so he apologizes for his actions, and she scolds Jasmine for letting him fight the arachne, but he explains that it isn't her fault. Alice cries since he didn't keep his promise to her, but Reynold tells her to cheer up since their son beat the arachne and made it back safely. Arthur starts to train with Jasmine, who tells him not to use magic as they fight with their swords, and they attack each other with ridiculous speed. He thinks about how he needs to get stronger so that he can protect the people he cares about, and after the fight, Arthur feels a gust of wind, which makes him remember Tessia. We see her running from a boulder, and she manages to get away, but she thinks she almost died since no one warned her about it. We learn that the elves taught her that humans are terrifying creatures who use violence to take everything from them, and when the traffickers kidnapped her, she realized that the stories were true. But she recalls how Arthur saved her, and it made her realize that not all humans are evil. Tessia's party heads to the guild, where they accept a wild boar hunting quest, but her friends want to leave the Sapin Kingdom since the humans aren't treating them well. They prepare to leave for their next quest, but the humans get in their way, so Tessia beats them up, and her friend Faye creates a wall of water as they escape. They ride a carriage, where the other adventurers stare at them, and we learn that the humans, dwarves and elves have an alliance, but it only exists between their kingdoms, and the three races still hate each other. A group of bandits attacks the carriage, so everyone works together to take them down, but another group jumps to attack Tessia, so she casts her wind magic to blow them away. Her friends know the bandits are after them, since elves fetch a high price in the black market, but she notes that she hasn't given up yet. They walk to a village, where they ask about the boar they need to hunt down, but the village chief refuses to help them since they're elves. We return to Arthur, as he wonders why Lucas has elvish blood, since he belongs to the Wykes family, which is a powerful clan in the Sapin Kingdom. He asks Elijah why he's connected to the dwarf royal family, so he notes that it's complicated, and wonders why Lucas is a part elf. He reveals that the Wykes family wants to produce powerful mages, so they welcomed elves who excel at mana control into their family, even though the humans are at odds with them. He notes that he wants to be the greatest mage on the continent, so Arthur wishes him luck, and explains that he isn't interested in becoming the strongest. But Jasmine interrupts them, and tells him they need to leave for their new quest. Tessia continues to ask around, but the villagers tell her to get lost, so she starts to cry. A couple of kids throw an acorn at her, so she becomes upset, but they tell her the boar has been coming from the east, and she thanks them for their help. She promises to get rid of it, but they think she's weak since the acorn hit her, so she explains that she just let her guard down. We see the cultists watching them, and they know that Tessia is an elven princess, so they want to ruin the alliance by killing her in the Sapin Kingdom. They send a giant boar toward her, and it charges at her party, but they jump and blast it with their spells. They think the fight is over, but it immediately recovers and knocks Faye down, so the girls cast their spells again, but they realize it's immune to magic. They run for their lives, and the cultists think they don't stand a chance, because even though the elves have incredible talent for magic, their bodies are known to be fragile. It crashes into a wall, but a rock hits the girl named Vio, and the boar prepares to finish her off, but Faye saves her with his water magic. They tell Tessia they must retreat, but she wants to fight the boar, and they realize she has a plan, so they decide to go along with it. Faye blasts the boar with his water, and runs as it chases after him, but he wonders why he agreed to become the decoy, since he isn't good at running. He lures it into Vio's trap, and it falls into a huge pit, and Tessia throws huge boulders at it using her wind magic. Her friends tell her they're exhausted, and she's glad the fight is finally over, but the boar suddenly jumps out of the pit. She realizes her friends are in danger, so she casts her wind magic to save them, and she thinks it's a dumb move, but she knows that Arthur would have done it if he were in her place. Faye summons a water rope to pull her to safety, and he tells her not to fight the boar, since she's already out of mana. She recalls how Arthur covered his fists with mana, and she decides to copy it, since she thinks it's the only way to defeat the boar. It rushes toward her, so her friends tell her to run, but she punches it with everything she's got, and her attack fills the area with light. The boar crashes to the ground, and her friends can't believe it, but she notes that her hand hurts, so they tell her it's because she isn't an augmenter. The cultists realize she defeated the boar, and they think they underestimated her, so they plan to prepare a stronger beast to get rid of her. Tessia tells the village chief she defeated the boar, but he just walks away, and Faye tells her they shouldn't expect courtesy from humans, but the kids thank her for killing the boar. We see Virion talking with Cynthia, and she's impressed Tessia completed the quest, but he notes that he can't take credit for it, since she was blessed with good friends. Cynthia wonders who he's talking about, so he tells her she knows him well, and notes that Tessia will change the world thanks to him. Tessia and her friends discuss what to do next, and they decide to go to Xyrus, so Vio looks forward to seeing Arthur again. Tessia wonders how she knows him, so she reveals that she went to Xyrus with him, and Faye notes that they used to see him often. They start to talk about his family, but Tessia thinks it's unfair, since nobody told her where to find him. Tessia visits Arthur's home, and she's excited to see him again, but she doesn't know how she's supposed to greet him. His mother and sister suddenly appear behind her, so she freaks out and runs away, and they wonder what's wrong with her. We see Arthur and Jasmine on a boat, but a giant wave suddenly hits them, and they hold onto each other, but they still get separated. Arthur wakes up on a shore, and he runs to look for Jasmine, but he finds Elijah and Lucas instead. He tells them he's on a mission to capture a mana beast, but he got caught in a storm, and they reveal that the same thing happened to them. He shows them the boat he used with Jasmine, and Elijah hopes she's okay, but he's confident that she's still alive, and he tells Sylvie to look for her. We see that Jasmine is also looking for Arthur, and she remembers Reynolds telling her that high-ranking beasts have been appearing in lower-level quests. She wonders if the guild has misjudged the difficulty of quests, so he explains that it's possible, but thinks there are people behind it who want to ruin the Three Kingdom Treaty. He notes that he wants his son to stop adventuring because of it, but he knows that Arthur is stubborn, so he tells her to look after him. Back in the present, Jasmine jumps around the island to look for Arthur, and she sees a couple of guards, who are looking for their master Lucas. They reveal that the Sapin royal family sent them, but they ended up there after a storm hit them, and they cry since they can't find Lucas. Lucas activates his dimensional ring to summon camping materials, and we learn that Arthur wanted to buy one for himself, but he couldn't afford it since it was too expensive. Arthur sets up a tent for his companions, since they don't know how to do it, but Lucas mentions that he's hungry, so Arthur collects food for everyone. He tells Lucas to cook the fish with his flames, so he casts his fire magic, but ends up burning most of them. He brags when he manages to cook a fish properly, but the others ignore him, and they start to eat together. Elijah praises Arthur for manipulating Lucas, but wonders why he still hasn't removed his mask, but he doesn't answer him. The next day, Arthur realizes they're the only people on the island, and wonders how they can escape since all of their boats were destroyed. Elijah wonders if anyone will come to rescue them, so Arthur notes that Jasmine is a AA ranked adventurer, which is why he's confident that she'll eventually find them. He adds that they can also try to reach the mainland themselves, but Lucas thinks it will never work, and he shows them his target, revealing that it has the power to control the weather. They realize it's the reason why a storm suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and think they can't escape if it activates its powers again, so they decide to help Lucas hunt it down. They see a cave, and they think Lucas's target is inside, so Arthur tells him to take care of it. He summons a fireball to destroy the cave, while Elijah creates an earth wall to shield them from the blast, and they think the creature couldn't have survived the explosion. The ground suddenly starts to shake, so they run to the woods, and the cave collapses, as a huge mana beast appears. It fires a water ball to attack them, so Arthur cuts it down, and tells the others to support him while he keeps it distracted. Elijah summons earth walls to protect him as he charges in, while Lucas attacks with his fireball, but it has no effect. Arthur slices it in the head, but it immediately regenerates, and he thinks they need to change their tactics, so he tells everyone to swap positions. He protects Elijah as he charges in, but Lucas isn't doing anything to help them, and Arthur mocks him for being weak, so he becomes angry and launches his fireballs. Arthur slashes the monster in the head, while Elijah seals its wound with his earth spikes, and they realize it can't regenerate, so they continue with this strategy. It collapses because of its injuries, so they think it's finally over, but it suddenly gets back up, and they can't believe it's still alive. We return to Jasmine, as she finds Sylvie, and is told that Arthur is stuck on an island. She runs on the water as she heads to the island, and she sees that Arthur is in danger, so she rushes to save him. The monster prepares to attack Arthur and the others, and they're too exhausted to fight on, so they start to panic, but Jasmine suddenly cuts its head off. She's glad to see that Arthur is fine, and the others realize she's OP, since she killed the monster in one hit. After that, Arthur thanks Jasmine for saving him, but they realize that Sylvie took the monster's mana core, and the others panic as she starts to eat it. We return to Tessia, as her friends wonder why she still hasn't seen Arthur, and they think it's because she's scared, so she tells them it isn't true. She leaves to visit Arthur's house again, and she musters up the courage to talk to him, but as she prepares to open the gate, Reynolds suddenly appears behind her, so she runs away again. We see the cultists as they watch the monsters defeat humans, and they think everything's going well. But one of them notes that it's not enough, and he mentions that they still need to find a powerful monster, which will help them carry out their plan in the future. Arthur and Jasmine meet a double-A ranked adventurer named Brauld, who tells them he has a lead on a treasure, but he needs their help to collect it. Arthur knows he's incredibly skilled, since his rank is equal to Jasmine's, but he wonders why he doesn't like seeing him around her. Adam prepares to fight Arthur, who recalls how he lost the last fight, but he knows things are different now. Adam charges in, so Arthur dodges his attack and counters, but he manages to block it. He overwhelms Arthur and kicks him away, and as he rushes forward, Arthur wonders if he will thrust or sweep, but he attacks from above. Arthur stops it with his sword, which impresses Adam, because no one has been able to stop it in a long time. His friends ask him why he didn't hold back, so he explains that it's because Arthur is a monster, but Eleanor tells him to stop bullying her brother. Angela wonders why Alice isn't angry, since Adam fought Arthur seriously, so she explains that she understands since they were training. The other members of the Twin Horns also want to train Arthur, and he looks forward to learning from them, since he knows they're all capable adventurers. Jasmine asks Reynolds about Brauld, so he explains that Brauld has a legendary reputation, since he always fights on the front lines, but he still clears his quests without a scratch. Reynolds wonders why she wants to learn about him, so she reveals that he invited her to go on a quest, but Reynolds doesn't understand why he would do that, since he already has a party. She notes that he asked other adventurers to join him as well, so she thinks he had a conflict with his party, but Reynolds tells her not to jump to conclusions. She decides to dig deeper, and after she leaves, he prepares to train with Arthur. But we see that he's already exhausted after training with the Twin Horns. We learn that they didn't hold back, since he's stronger than they expected, and Reynolds tells him to prepare for their training, but Alice notes that he has had enough for the day, and Reynolds is sad since he didn't get to train with his son. Arthur looks for Jasmine, so Reynolds tells him she's busy, so he decides to spend time with the family. We cut to Lucas, as his guards tell him there are a lot of quests available, but he doesn't want to accept them since he finds them boring. The guards explain that several adventurers died recently, and he knows it's because high-ranking beasts appeared in low-level quests, but he's confident that he can defeat any monster that gets in his way. His servant Shun tells him Brauld is recruiting party members to raid a high-level dungeon, and he thinks Lucas is strong enough to join Brauld's party. The guards warn Lucas it's dangerous since the quest isn't authorized by the guild, but he refuses to listen to them and leaves to look for Brauld. Eleanor tries on a dress, and Arthur tells her it looks pretty, so she decides to buy it for her birthday. He doesn't enjoy going shopping, but Alice tells him they need to buy her shoes and accessories, and he's forced to go along with it. Tessia's friends ask her if she saw Arthur, so she explains that she was about to meet him, but she got interrupted. Faye starts to mock her, so she notes that she'll banish him when she becomes queen, and admits that she misses Arthur. Faye wonders if Virion has given them a new quest, but she notes that they need to wait for him to finish his investigation, and they wonder why high-ranking beasts have been appearing in low-level quests. Vio sees Arthur, and tells Tessia to look to her side, but she doesn't see him since he's already gone. We see Arthur as he looks at the dimensional rings in a shop, and he asks Angela and Helen about the cheapest one available, so they tell him it can't even store their weapons. He thinks it's useless, and realizes he needs to buy the expensive ones to store everything he needs, but his mother and sister find him, and tell him to help them with their shopping. Arthur returns home, and he tells Sylvie he's exhausted, but she wonders when they'll leave for another quest, since she wants to eat more manacores. He realizes they need to go adventuring again, but notes that he's about to go on his last quest, since he only planned to be an adventurer until he could enroll in the academy. He visits Jasmine, but realizes she's wearing a dress, and Alice and Eleanor reveal that they picked it for her. He tells her it looks cute, but she becomes embarrassed and runs off, so he wonders what's wrong with her. After that, Jasmine tells Arthur she has decided to reject Brawl's invitation, since she thinks it's dangerous, but she knows he wants to accept it. He explains that he isn't sure, but tells her their next quest will be his last, so he wants to do something that will be memorable. She tells him his safety is their priority, but she understands why he wants to take risks, so she tells him to prepare for their last quest. Arthur and Jasmine prepare to leave, and Reynold tells him to get back safely, so that they can celebrate after the quest. Arthur and Jasmine go through a portal, and Sylvie notes that she'll stay behind since she doesn't like caves, but she wishes them the best of luck. Meanwhile, one of the cultists tries to take control of a monster, but it doesn't work, since the monster's level is too high. But he thinks he has done enough, and he's excited to see what the monster can do. Arthur and Jasmine head to the entrance of the dungeon, where they meet the other members of Brawl's party, and they realize that Elijah and Lucas are also there. The A-ranked odd mentors Reginald and Creole introduce themselves to the group, and a man named Oliver reveals himself as an A-ranked conjurer. Arthur recognizes him, and knows he's an emitter like Alice, so he has high expectations for him. Another conjurer named Samantha looks forward to working with everyone, and Brawl joins them, telling them he'll serve as their leader. He notices that Arthur and Jasmine are carrying bags, since they don't have dimensional rings, so Elijah stores their bags for them. They enter the dungeon, as Arthur recalls that Brawl told them he was hired to collect a huge magic stone, which is found on the lowest floor. Creole asks everyone why they decided to join the dungeon raid, and notes that he's in it for the money, but Lucas and Samantha reveal that they just want recognition. Reginald notes that he also needs money for his kids, and Creole reveals that he wants to open a bakery, but he knows it's a huge investment. Brawl summons fire to light up the area, and notes that he's already scouted ahead, but he didn't reach the lowest floor. He explains that the dungeon is called the Tomb of Terror, since the monsters there come back to life after they're defeated, and they don't drop mana cores, so it's best to avoid them as much as possible. Everyone thinks they won't run into monsters near the entrance, but they suddenly get surrounded by bat runners, so they jump into action. Brawl tells them to conserve energy and mana, but Creole explains that it's easier said than done, since there are too many monsters. Arthur tells Lucas to use his fire magic while he backs him up, so Lucas summons countless fireballs, which wipe out the monsters. But Brawl tells him he wasted too much mana, and notes that they should go before the bat runners finish reviving. They reach a cliff, so Elijah casts his earth magic to make a stairway, and they use it to reach the bottom. Brawl mentions that there's a passageway ahead, and they continue to explore the dungeon, but Samantha suddenly activates a trap, which launches sharp rocks at her. Arthur cuts them down, but everyone wonders why Brawl didn't warn them about the trap, and they realize he didn't know about it. We learn that he received the quest from one of the cultists, who gave him a map to the lowest floor and offered to pay him extra if he went with skilled adventurers. But the cultist never warned him about the traps, and even told him that the Tomb of Terror isn't dangerous. Brawl tells everyone they must proceed with caution, but they reach an area filled with steam, and they ask Brawl what's going on, but he admits that he has no idea. They realize he didn't scout the dungeon before they got there, so Reginald becomes angry, but a giant worm suddenly appears, so Creole smashes it with his shield, forcing it to retreat. Reginald demands that Brawl tell them the truth, so he admits that his client gave him a map of the dungeon, and notes that he knew about the bat runners, but he didn't expect to run into the traps in the giant worm. Arthur realizes the client lied to him, and Oliver thinks they're doomed if they follow him, so he tells Samantha they should take the treasure while the others are busy with the worm. He starts to walk away with her, but Arthur senses danger, so he takes her back to the group, while Lucas protects everyone with his barrier. Oliver refuses to join them, but there's suddenly an eruption, and Samantha casts her water magic to save him, but the lava reaches him first. They see his charred remains, but Arthur notices the magic stone on his staff and tells Samantha to use it on her wand. The giant worm emerges from the ground, and everyone attacks it with everything they've got, as Samantha realizes that Oliver's stone made her magic stronger. Elijah restrains it with his earth magic, but it easily breaks free, so the augmenters charge in. Brauld and Jasmine slash it with their blades, but it barely takes damage, and Reginald smashes it with his hammer, but it immediately recovers and pushes him back. Arthur enchants his sword with flames, and launches a flurry of attacks, but the worm suddenly charges at Lucas, so Arthur saves him. Jasmine continues to attack it, but it hides in a hole, and the ground starts to shake, so Arthur realizes they need to prepare for another eruption. He tells Lucas to summon his barrier, but realizes he's too afraid to move, so he rushes to protect him. Lava fills the area, and everyone does their best to defend themselves, but Brauld ends up losing his arm. Arthur cauterizes the wound, and Creole gives him a sandwich, which he finds delicious. Creole reveals that it's his wife's recipe, so Arthur realizes he plans to run a bakery with her, but Lucas thinks they're doomed since Brauld lost his arm. He explains that it wouldn't have happened if Lucas had summoned his barrier, and they start to argue, but Arthur tells them to stop, and asks Brauld if they should still look for the treasure. He admits that he never even set foot in the dungeon before they got there, and thinks he got what he deserved for putting everyone in danger, but he tells them they shouldn't give up. He promises not to slow them down, and thinks Arthur should take over as their leader, since he was able to maintain his composure during their worst moments. He accepts the role, and they open the door to the lowest floor, but they're surprised to see an area filled with crystals. They start to explore it, and Arthur's companions think it's the most beautiful place they've ever seen, but he senses danger and realizes they're going in circles. Lucas wonders why there's another entrance, but the others can't see it, so Arthur thinks the mist is showing them illusions. He tells everyone not to be fooled by what they see, and notes that they need to leave, since they might get trapped there. But Lucas is against it, and explains that they can't leave without the magic stone. Reginald and the others agree with Lucas, so Elijah wonders what's wrong with them, and Arthur thinks the mist is affecting their desires. Creole sees his fiancée and walks toward her, so Arthur tells him to stop, but he disappears into the mist. Lucas's brother appears before him, and tells him he'll become the ultimate mage since he's extremely talented, but reminds him that he's the son of a slave. He becomes angry hearing this, but Elijah asks him if he's okay, and he realizes it was just an illusion. Jasmine sees her father, who tells her relatives to recognize her talents, but Arthur calls out to her, and she realizes she was just seeing things. She asks him if he's also been seeing illusions, but he explains that he has seen nothing so far, and thinks it's because he just wants to keep everyone safe. Brauld sees a group of monsters, so he swings his sword wildly and tells them he's an A-ranked adventurer, while Samantha sees the magic stone, but it suddenly disappears as Arthur calls out to her. He tells her to protect everyone from the mist, so she surrounds them with her water barrier, and he asks Jasmine if she can get rid of the mist. She explains that she can only clear a path, and he tells Samantha to remove her barrier, as Jasmine blows the mist away with a wind arrow. They see vines around them, so Brauld starts to cut them down, and Arthur tells him not to attack without a plan, but realizes he has gone berserk because of the illusion he saw. Lucas summons his flames to burn the vines, but it doesn't work, and Arthur and Jasmine cut through them, but they immediately regenerate. Arthur enchants his swords with flames, and burns the vines to ash, but Lucas wonders why Arthur's fire is more effective than his magic. Brauld gets overwhelmed by the vines, so Arthur saves him, while Lucas summons his flames again. It spreads through the vines, but Arthur notices that the moisture prevents them from burning away, so he thinks there must be a body of water beneath them. He tells Samantha to remove the moisture, so she casts a spell that dries them up, and the vines stop regenerating. Arthur tells everyone they need to find Creole and escape, but Lucas is upset since the situation has turned into a disaster, and notes that he wouldn't have joined them if they hadn't lied to him. Jasmine asks Reginald about Creole's fiancée, so he reveals that she died in a dungeon, and notes that Creole went there since he wanted to fulfill their dream. The mist suddenly returns, and the vines start to move again, so everyone cuts them down. But they freak out as they see an S-rank mana beast, which is known as the Elderwood's guardian spirit. They see that it is Creole, and Brauld charges at it head-on, but it easily knocks him down. Reginald rushes forward and surrounds himself with rock armor, so Arthur tries to stop him, but the rocks send Arthur flying. Reginald attacks the Guardian, but it easily pushes him away, and Lucas freaks out since his companions are down. Jasmine tells Arthur they need to escape, since she promised his parents she would keep him safe, but he tells her he wants to escape with the others. He cuts through the vines with his flames, and tells Elijah to help Brauld, so he summons earth walls to protect him. The vines break through, but Jasmine saves Brauld before they can reach him, and Arthur thinks they must destroy the Guardian's main body to defeat it. He thinks Samantha can't remove all the moisture from its body, and he enchants his sword with lightning, since he knows that it burns stronger than fire. He jumps to attack the Guardian, and manages to land a solid hit, which causes it to crumble. He thinks the fight is over, but it suddenly starts to move again, and Arthur realizes he can't burn it down. Reginald charges in, but it immediately restrains him, and Arthur tells Lucas to burn the vines, but he freezes once again. He watches helplessly as everyone fights for their lives, but he thinks he's pathetic and notes that he's supposed to be the most exalted. He suddenly approaches Arthur and explains that he must survive and become the most powerful mage, since he's a member of the Wykes family. He wants everyone to sacrifice themselves so he can survive, and he blasts Arthur away, so Jasmine rushes to his side, but Lucas attacks her as well. Elijah asks him what he's doing, but he knocks Elijah down and explains that he won't risk his life for commoners, since his life is more valuable. He notes that he sees everyone as his servants and assures them that their names will go down in history if they die for him. He blasts the ceiling with his magic, and Elijah runs to dodge the falling crystals, but the Guardian catches him and prepares to finish him off. He thinks it's all over for him, but Brauld suddenly comes to his rescue, and he cuts off the Guardian's arm. But it suddenly stabs him with its vines, and Arthur realizes the battle has gone south, so he decides to use his trump card. His hands start to glow as he activates the power that Varian took decades to master, and he blows away the vines as he exudes energy. He covers himself with a mysterious power that freezes everything around him, and he charges at the Guardian as he uses his absolute zero skill, which causes it to freeze and shatter. Elijah can't believe how powerful he is, but he passes out, and the cave collapses as the Guardian is defeated. After that, Arthur wakes up and sees Elijah, who crushes one of the gems on his glove to heal him, and he recalls that Lucas betrayed them. He realizes Jasmine is injured, since she was hit by Lucas's flames, so he tells Elijah to use a gem on her as well. He notes that her breathing has improved, and Arthur is glad his mother gave him the healing gems, but Elijah can't believe they're around the same age. He realizes he isn't wearing his mask, and Elijah notes that he couldn't find it, but he was able to keep their other belongings safe. Arthur thanks Elijah for saving him and Jasmine, so Elijah explains that he didn't want to be like Lucas, who just left them to die. He notes that he won't let Lucas get away with what he did, and wonders why Arthur didn't run from the Guardian, even though Jasmine told him to escape. So he explains that he promised to protect the people he cares about, and asks Elijah if he made the metal shelter they're in. He reveals that he made it with his magic to protect them while the cave was collapsing, but Arthur knows that humans can't create metal out of nothing, so he wonders if Elijah is a dwarf. He explains that he doesn't know, and reveals that he was raised by an elder in the Dwarf Kingdom, but he never met his parents. He notes that he was able to live a normal life, even though he didn't enjoy his childhood, but when his core reached the deep orange level, he felt a strange energy that caused him to pass out. When he woke up, he realized he was surrounded by metal, and the elder told him to leave the Dwarf Kingdom and travel the continent. He explains that he still doesn't understand the reason, and thinks he got his powers from his parents, but Jasmine suddenly interrupts them. They realize she's just talking in her sleep, and Elijah asks Arthur about the magic he used to defeat the Guardian, so he explains that he's an augmenter who can use 6 elements. Elijah can't believe it, but wonders why his appearance changed when he used his trump card, so he explains that it's because he unleashed his beast will. He crushes a gem to heal Jasmine again, and when she wakes up, she immediately hugs Arthur and apologizes for failing to protect him. He tells her it's his fault, since he was the one who dragged her into this mess, and he notes that they must escape the cave. They leave the shelter and realize the crystals are everywhere, so Arthur wonders if they're the only ones who survived. Elijah reveals that he couldn't find Reginald and Brauld, but he was able to cover Samantha before the cave collapsed, so Arthur suggests looking for her. Elijah scans the area with his magic, and he manages to find her, so he takes everyone to her shelter. Arthur sees his mask on the ground, so he picks it up, and Elijah opens Samantha's shelter. He realizes she's still alive and prepares to remove the vines around her legs, but Arthur stops him since he knows it's keeping her legs secure. They carry her away, and Elijah suggests looking for the Guardian's core, but the ground suddenly shakes, and they realize the cave is collapsing again. They try to get out, but they see a giant crystal blocking the exit, and Elijah can't remove it with his magic. But Arthur breaks through it, and they climb a ladder as they make their way back. They hide from the monsters, and realize they can't use the path they used to get there, so they look for another route. Water suddenly comes out of the ground, and the water level rises, so everyone starts to panic. Arthur tells everyone to dive, and they use Jasmine's air bubble to breathe, while the current sweeps them away. Arthur wakes up, and he's glad everyone survived, but they suddenly realize they're surrounded by monsters. They cut down the monsters as they fight for their lives, but there are too many of them, and they get overwhelmed. Arthur is the last one standing, and he continues to fight, but he reaches his limit and thinks he's about to meet his end. But the ceiling suddenly collapses, and the monsters are crushed by the debris. Arthur realizes Sylvie saved him, and he's amazed by how much she's grown, but Elijah freaks out when he sees her, since he's never seen a dragon before. Arthur tells him to keep her a secret, but he realizes Arthur is on another level, since he has a dragon as his partner. They ride on Sylvie's back, and she flies past the monsters, as Elijah realizes they're afraid of her. They finally escape the dungeon, and she tells Arthur she can fly him back to the town, but he knows that the people will panic if they see her. Samantha wakes up, and she shows everyone the Guardian's core, revealing that she stumbled upon it. Arthur tells her they should split the profits, but she wants him to have it, and Elijah agrees with her, since they know he's the reason they're still alive. He accepts the core and writes a letter to his parents, since he wants them to know he's okay. He asks Sylvie if she can return to her baby form, so she shrinks her body, and everyone receives medical attention as rescue arrives. We see Arthur and his friends in the infirmary, and Caspian is glad he has already recovered, but tells him their dungeon raid didn't have the guild's authorization. He reveals that Lucas filed a complaint against them and claimed that Arthur is responsible for the disaster, so the guild council must hold a hearing to discuss his case. We see that the guild sent adventurers to the Tomb of Terror, and they were able to recover Brawl's body, as well as Reginald's belongings. Samantha survived the incident, but her injuries are so severe that she can no longer continue as an adventurer, and Arthur thinks about how he'll be called to testify about what happened. He sees Lucas, who pretends that nothing happened, and Arthur tells him he's lucky to be alive. Arthur meets Caspian, who explains that according to Lucas, Arthur used his party members as decoys so that he could escape with Jasmine. Caspian explains that he doesn't believe everything Lucas said, so he asks for Arthur's side of the story, and notes that he'll talk to Elijah as well. Jasmine wakes up, and immediately looks for Arthur, but she stumbles upon her sister Senya, so she asks her if their father told her everything that happened. Senya is glad she was able to make good friends, but she knows that Jasmine almost died, so she tells her to take care of herself. We see Elijah training alone, but Lucas suddenly interrupts him and tells him to testify against Arthur. He refuses to do it, so Lucas orders his guards to get rid of him, but he summons his staff to defend himself. He blocks their attacks, but they overwhelm him with their numbers, so he thinks it's all over for him. But they suddenly stop moving, and a knife flies past Lucas. He realizes he was hit, and he panics as he sees Arthur, who prepares to finish him off. Caspian stops him and tells him to let the inquiry run its course, so he decides to spare Lucas, and his guards take him to the infirmary. Caspian notes that he needs to speak to Arthur in private, so his friends leave, and Caspian tells him his actions would only make things worse. He explains that he has the power to erase Lucas, and the Wykes don't even know his true identity, so he could get away with eliminating him. He wonders if Caspian stopped him since he's on Lucas's side, and he becomes intimidated as Arthur stares at him, but he notes that he just wants what's best for Arthur. He explains that the Wykes will hunt him down if anything happens to Lucas, and they might even target the people who are close to him. So Arthur realizes he has a point, but notes that he wants to ask a favor from him. Arthur and Lucas appear before the judge, who explains that he has discussed the case with the jury, so he's ready to announce his decision. He strips Lucas of his position as an A-ranked conjurer, and notes that he can no longer register as an adventurer. But he doesn't care, because he knows his father can fix everything for him, and he thinks he won't need his adventurer card since he'll soon enroll in the academy. The judge also tells Arthur that he's banned from entering the academy since he's an enemy of the Wykes family, and he explains that he doesn't deserve to be punished, but the judge tells him the decision is final. He notes that he won't ask Arthur to surrender his adventurer card, but he needs to stay away from the Wykes family, and Lucas thinks he's done for. But the judge notes that he has finished announcing his decision, and Lucas wonders why he didn't ask Arthur to reveal his identity. A member of the jury explains that they've decided not to make his identity public, so Lucas starts to complain, but the judge reminds him that there's no room for debate because the decision is final. His servants tell him his father wants to meet him, so he leaves the courtroom, and Arthur starts to walk away, but the judge stops him and offers to show him the back entrance. The judge takes him to the library, where we learn that it was all just an act, and Arthur thanks the judge for his cooperation. He explains that he didn't do it for Arthur, and warns him that the Wykes might learn about his secret, but he notes that he's extremely cautious. The judge shows him a secret path, and he escapes through the back door, but Sylvie suddenly rushes to his side, and asks him if they can go home. He tells her it's all over, so they make their way back with Elijah and Jasmine, but Elijah is sad since they need to part ways. Arthur invites him to stay with them until school begins, but he notes that he has no plans to enroll, so Arthur explains that studying in Xyrus will help him become a famous adventurer. He notes that he can't get into the academy since he lacks money and connections, but Arthur promises to take care of everything for him and tells Jasmine to escort him home. After they leave, Arthur talks to Caspian and thanks him for following his plan. We see that when Arthur asked for a favor, Caspian didn't want to make the Wykes family his enemy, but Arthur knows that Lucas will pressure Caspian to reveal his identity. He tells Caspian to keep his identity a secret and promises to support the guild after he gets stronger, so Caspian accepts the deal. We return to the present, as Caspian gives Arthur a bag of coins and tells him to use it to protect himself. Arthur is worried that Lucas will recognize Sylvie, but she transforms into a white cat, and he can't believe she can do that. Arthur removes his mask and heads to a shop, where he spends most of his money to buy a dimensional ring, and he's glad that he's now ready for school. That evening, Arthur returns home, and his family is glad that he made it back safely. He learns that Jasmine left to join the Twin Horns, but he wonders what happened to Lilia, so Vincent reveals that she's already in the academy. He asks his father what stage he's at, so he reveals that he's stuck at Deep Orange, and explains that he isn't making progress, even though he tried everything to reach the next stage. So Arthur shows him the Guardian's core and explains that he can use it to get stronger. He refuses to accept it, but Arthur reveals that he's already at Light Orange, and Reynold doesn't want his son to beat him, so he ends up taking the core. The next day, Alice heals Elijah, who realizes Arthur has incredible talent, since both of his parents are skilled adventurers. Arthur and Elijah head to the market, where they buy everything Elijah needs, but he wonders why Arthur is doing so much for him, so Arthur reminds him that he saved his life. He thinks he also needs to repay Arthur, since he couldn't have escaped the Tomb of Terror without him, but Arthur tells him not to think about it and runs off. We see that Jasmine has recovered from her injuries, and Helen invites her to join the Twin Horns for their next quest, since they think it's going to be tough. Jasmine notes that she wants to do something before they leave, and Helen knows what she's thinking, so she tells her to take her time. We see Elijah carrying his supplies, and Arthur knows he's exhausted, so they decide to take a break. Arthur wonders why he doesn't use his dimensional ring to store his supplies, and he wonders why he didn't do that in the first place, so Arthur realizes he didn't use his brain. We cut to Lucas, who asks Caspian about Arthur, but he refuses to say anything. Lucas tells him he can't oppose the Wykes family since he's just a guild head, but he explains that the guild has tightened its rules, since it's now active internationally. He explains that he can't break the rules for the Wykes, since they no longer enjoy the same status they once had, and he adds that he can't give Lucas what he wants, because he isn't even an adventurer at the moment. We see a man who has broken into the records section, and he checks out the files, but can't find the info he's looking for. But he reads a document about Jasmine, and realizes she's a member of the Twin Horns. That evening, Sylvie tells Arthur she's hungry, and notes that she can smell food, so he shows her a mana core. But he explains that he can't let her eat it, since he still needs to study it. Eleanor tells him their father wants to meet him, so he heads outside, but he's surprised to see Jasmine. Reynold explains that she's about to go on a quest with the Twin Horns, and she knows she won't see Arthur for a while, so she wants to fight him before she leaves. They prepare for their match, but Elijah wonders why she challenged Arthur to a duel, so Adam explains that it's an adventurer tradition. Angela and Durden prepare to set up their barriers so that their fight won't damage their surroundings, and Jasmine tells Arthur she won't hold back. She immediately charges in, and they start to clash, but she overpowers him and kicks him in the head. He knows he still isn't as good as he was in his past life, but he wants to show her how much he has improved, so he does his best to dodge her attacks, but she still hits him with her elbow. Adam realizes she has the advantage, since they're fighting in her preferred range, and he notes that he wouldn't let her get up close, since he knows she's dangerous at close range. They continue to clash, and Arthur jumps back to maintain his distance, but she rushes forward and prepares to stab him, but he kicks her away. He admits that he can't beat her with just his sword, and she agrees to fight him with magic, so he enchants his sword with flames. She avoids his attacks, but everyone's amazed by how much stronger he has become, and thinks he'll continue to grow since he's only 11. He launches a fireball, but Jasmine deflects it, so Durden summons a barrier to stop it, and tells the others they need to step back. Arthur realizes he can't match her technique, and thinks the only way to defeat her is to overpower her, so he continues to attack with his fire. She manages to block it, but he immediately jumps to attack her, so she uses her wind to weaken his flames. Elijah wonders how she did it, since he knows it's extremely difficult to pull off, so Helen reminds him she's from the Flamesworth family, which wields the most powerful fire magic in the kingdom. Helen knows she has low self-esteem since she was born with an affinity for wind, but she knows her time with Arthur changed her, and Jasmine recalls how he praised her magic the first time she showed it to him. She tells him to fight her seriously, so he decides not to hold back, and enchants his sword with lightning. He surrounds her with his lightning bolts, and immediately closes the distance, but she compresses air to block his attack. He prepares to summon lightning again, but she sweeps his leg and tries to finish him off, but he manages to roll away. He realizes she's predicting all of his moves, so he considers using Absolute Zero to defeat her, but decides not to do it. He tells her their fight is just getting started, and he rushes to attack her, so she jumps away, but he throws bags of oil and blasts them with his flames. He catches her leg with his rope, and she crashes to the ground, but she creates a smoke screen as she covers her blade with poison. She tells him not to worry since it won't kill him, and they clash again, but he thinks he must do whatever it takes to win the fight, because it's the only way to show her he learned a lot from her. He rushes forward and throws his sword, which blinds her as he covers it with his fire, and he goes for her neck before she can recover. She's glad he learned a lot from her, and notes that he has gotten stronger, but he tells her it's all thanks to her. The next day, Arthur gives Jasmine the dimensional ring he bought, and tells her to keep it as a parting gift, and he promises to tell her about the academy when they meet again. He says goodbye to the twin horns, but he suddenly becomes sad, as he wonders what could have happened if Lucas hadn't betrayed him. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.